I was going to piggyback on Susan and say, yes, I would say even if you're a professor and that student is in your class, if you wanted to even email them a list of resources, that is still appropriate in your advocacy role. And just letting them know, I understand you're not ready to move forward right now, but when you are, if you are, here are some resources that might be beneficial for you. It still shows them that you care, you're invested in them being well and healthy, and you're concerned about them, but not pushing them to do something that they aren't ready for. Domestic violence is a tough place. So you give as much support, gentle though. Any other questions? Someone asked in the chat, and Susan, this may be something that you can respond to. Are there university-wide policies or awareness efforts, for instances, that our duties as lighthouse advocates might interfere, for lack of a better word, with their own departmental duties? Says miss a meeting, for example. In good faith, I would assume this is a given that we can expect this, but I wonder if there's any concrete verbiage for us as advocates. So are you asking, as an advocate, if something advocacy wise conflicts with something departmental, is there a policy that's an acceptable thing? Is that what we're hearing? You can respond out loud if you can.
Yeah, I'm thinking of like, what if it would require, in that instance, like someone mentioned earlier, a walk to the student health center, but there's like a committee meeting or a general exam or something. How would we navigate that with assurance that us performing this advocacy work is not going to be punitive in any way? I mean, obviously the advocacy work is going to take priority, but I wonder if there's any like assurances that there is no punitive atmosphere around performing that advocacy.
That's a great question. I'm not aware of a specific policy. I surely hope as an advocate and in your responsibilities, your supervisor would be supportive of you. If you had to miss a meeting or something, in regards to providing that student support. But I don't know that there's specific language for that. In regards to your role in being confidential, now that is part of policy. So there is verbiage in our policy in regards to being a confidential resource for students. So I can speak to that, but I'm not aware of a specific policy addressing your concerns about missing maybe job responsibility or required meetings to support someone in that advocacy role.
I would suggest maybe talking, if you are an advocate, maybe asking that question of what that might look like in your department, because that is helpful to know. If you are sitting with a victim who has just experienced something traumatic, but you don't want to experience anything unpleasant because you are sitting with them and there's something that you need to attend as well. That might be helpful to know how to navigate that, because it can cause some anxiety if you're trying to figure out, do I help the student or do I kind of go do my thing? Or what is the best way to handle this? Do I hand them off to someone else? Is there another advocate in the department that doesn't have to do this? Or can I call the student health center and get someone on the phone with them to talk to them before we can get them to the building. So there are a couple of different ways you can handle that, but I definitely suggest speaking with your department heads to find out how that could work. I see a question that says, have you all had any situations where both parties were participating in abusive behavior, and how was it resolved? My perspective from a therapist is going to look a little bit different because for me, there's a conflict of interest type situation. So for me, whoever comes first is who I will deal with, and that's going to be one part of the story, right? So that's the person that is in front of me. I can only work with that client in front of me at the time. So that's how I work with that situation. So I really don't know what the other person does unless they are still in relationship or things like that, you know, and then there's a lot of work that happens there with what a resolution looks like. But as far as Lighthouse, Susan, I don't know if y'all have had a case that you've had to do that.
Yeah, great question. So we have had, in my 4 years coordinating this program, I think I can think of 2 instances where we did have accusations of abuse among both parties in the relationship. The way that we handled that as a Lighthouse program is we, of course, you know, I served one of the students and another student was served by someone else. Certainly, we don't want to have a conflict of interest. The way that it was resolved is, so in this situation, students were going through a reporting process. And so that was worked out through throughout the accountability process. So I think the result in that situation was students signed a agreement to essentially not contact one another. And I don't know specifically, I can't speak to if there were outcomes, but it was a similar to what Jeff was referring to, kind of an informal resolution agreement that we came to.
I have a question to kind of follow up with that same type of situation. So would the advocates be able to collaborate with the type of resources that they shared with the individual that they were helping?
Can you repeat that question so we can get some more clarity?
So for this same type of situation where it's both parties, would the advocates be able to kind of collaborate amongst each other on the types of resources that they shared with the individuals that they were helping? Or would it have to be still confidential?
No, I mean, sorry. So, I mean, you can certainly share resources. I would say like the confidentiality is still in place. But you know, in this scenario, we the other advocate was we just talked through the resources that we had provided in this situation. One of them had a little bit more, had more resources outside of the campus, so agreed to do some of the seek services outside of the campus. But still, you need to have that confidentiality between you and the student. And I find that in working with students, a lot of times they are, you know, they want you to share some of that information and have that open line of communication. So, you know, again, you know, having that conversation with that student saying, you know, can we maybe have a discussion about the issues that are going on so we can work to some sort of solution.
Any other questions?
I was wondering, are there any
Thank you,
cards
everyone, for participating. Thanks for hanging in there with our technology issues. I did want to go back to, because I did see someone put in the chat when I proposed earlier, like, what is some other information that would be helpful if a student did come to you? And someone had said, you know, wondering what their housing situation was, or, you know, where are they living? That would be really helpful information. It may be something that comes out in your conversation. I think, you know, not asking directly like, hey, do you live with this person? But a good question to ask and to kind of get an assessment is, you know, are you currently safe? And a lot of times that can formulate and require, not require, but a student will share, I am in a safe place. I don't live with this person, or maybe, you know, they do live with this individual and they're worried about their safety. And then there's another opportunity for talking about some relocation options.
Okay, we were having some tech issues again. There were some verbal questions. Rachel said there were more verbal questions not coming through. Can you speak up now?
I just had a question about the, I put it on the chat. Are there any cards or brochures we could have to give to a student?
Yes, yes. This is the weirdness of a virtual training. So you will receive electronic copies of everything, as well as you will receive something through campus mail, and we will include some of our brochures and everything. But you always can reach out to me if you need more resources. But yes, we typically will have brochures in your hands for you to look at.
Any other verbal questions that people are trying to ask or wanted to ask that we didn't hear? Okay, how would you go about linking a victim to Iris the Star? Are there dedicated contacts or only the phone number?
So the phone numbers, both of these agencies require some intake information. So there is, you know, they do have to call those phone numbers. Something that is helpful is if you do have a student that is interested in getting, for example, STAR. So their legal advocacy services, a person that wants to utilize those services needs to contact them and go through their intake process. So you can share that information with the student. There is a specific contact that, you know, we say, hey, I just want to let you know that I did refer the student to you all, just so that you're, you know, on the lookout. And, you know, that's one of the challenges that we face in collaborating with IRIS and STAR, and also Butterfly Society. They're a newer organization. Is that they need that information, and so their process for intake may require a student to have to reshare their story. So we typically try to reach out to a staff member there to let them know about the situation, to hopefully, you know, limit the amount of questions to re-traumatize someone. So I can share specific contacts with you in regards to these agencies, but this again would be, you know, something that you could shoot me an email and say, hey, I'm going to help a student get connected to STAR. Who is the person that we should just give a heads up to? For STAR, that's Morgan. She's the director of legal services. If it's counseling, we're probably going to look at, I think it's Rebecca, not Rebecca. I'm sorry, I can't think of her name right now, but, and then over at IRIS, someone that does their legal advocacy is Sarah Margaret. She, you know, we're in communication with her a lot of times when we send referrals. So that is certainly a challenge in a student trying to get those community resources and trying to relay that information to that agency about what's going on, so we can work on not re-traumatizing that student. Okay, so thank you all for your questions. Again, sorry about our technical difficulties.